Flip to Freedom, episode number 63. Hello again, this is Sean Terry from the Flip to Freedom podcast, and we are on episode number 63. Now, if you are joining me for the very first time, I'd like to welcome you and let you know that I have put this podcast together for you to show you how to escape the 9 to 5, get out of the rat race, quit your job, how to make quick cash, how to make big cash quickly with using none of your own credit, using no cash. I don't care if you have any experience, and you're going to learn how to do this by flipping properties in your spare time. Quick turning real estate. Now, you can buy properties for rental purposes and get the cash flow. That means you're going to have to apply for a loan. You're going to have to get your credit pulled. You're going to have to, go find a property, potentially do some renovation on it. You're going to have to hold on to it for a long term. That is an approach. You can buy properties for fix and flip. That's where you can buy a property at a discount, turn around, you put some money into it, you fix it up, and then you turn around and sell it. And this podcast is great if you're that type of person, because I show you exactly how to go out and find deals. So you don't have to go through the MLS, you don't have to go through the auctions, and you don't have to do short sales, but this will give you another avenue to go out and find properties. I got now 62 different episodes now that you can listen to that I'll talk about how to go out and do this business. Now, other parts of real estate might be commercial. You might want to get into commercial. Well, this podcast is great because when you're marketing for motivated sellers, guess what? There are motivated sellers that want to sell commercial property. There's motivated sellers that want to sell multi-unit properties, motivated sellers that want to sell single-family houses or land. So you can learn exactly how to do that. But I particularly focus on in this is the least barrier of entry, of where a person can get involved, understand the concepts of real estate, a simple real estate transaction, and be able to market for a seller, specifically target a seller, and get the property under contract, and then turn around and market the property to a buyer. Now, if you understand what is selling in your market, you understand what the right price is, you understand what is a deal, then you'll be able to go out and sell a property quickly. Now, you can make the spread, the difference in between. There are some spreads, differences that I've made upwards to a lot of money, but recently in the past month or so, made upwards to $40,000 to $50,000 on spreads, between the buy side and the sell side. Well, think about it. That took 30 days. Well, guess what? Some people don't even make $40,000 in a year, where you can turn around and do this over and over and over again. So that's what this podcast is about. Now, I also like to share people that have listened to the podcast, they took the information and they applied it, and they went out and got success and got results. Now, I have a compelling story for you today by the name of gentleman by the name of Charles Johnson, and it's amazing. And I called the name this podcast "The Champion Within," which came from him. And his story, I can tell you, has put goosebumps. When he was telling it, I literally got goosebumps all over my body. Is that unbelievable of what he had to go through and what he has experienced at the young age of 37 in his life, to where now he's in a situation where he actually went out and he's done 2 transactions within 8 days of each other, and made close to $18,000, and he's absolutely ecstatic, a changed man. And it's a great story. Then I actually go in for an hour and interview him on exactly the details. Specifically, not only did this massive obstacle that he had to overcome, and that's where he found his champion within, but also too how he marketed for the deal, what specific list he targeted, what mail piece he used, what what he did when he went on the appointment, how he negotiated the deal, how he went out and found the buyer, how he negotiated with the buyer, how he found his repair cost, and the entire thing, and how he turned around and sold the property quickly and without using any marketing, any cash down or anything like that, or used any type of having his credit pulled. And I think it's an awesome story, and I'm so glad to have him on the show with us here at the Flip to Freedom podcast. Now, again, if you are new, if you want more of me, I actually wrote a book. It's a 129-page book called The Ultimate Real Estate Investing Blueprint. And what it does is it pretty much maps out a 19-week program on where you can go out weeks or less. It specifically breaks down exactly step by step what you need to do to go out and first, number one, get your check. Number two, how to get 1 year's worth of income in the bank as fast as possible. And number three, how to go out and build cash flow from rental properties. Now, that's exactly the 19-week program. You can get that at flip2freedom.com. Flip2freedom.com. Just search in Google Flip2Freedom, and it'll be the number one result there. And you can download that book for free. You'll see a video of me. I've had people tell me that they have spent well over $1,000 for the same information I give away for free in these podcasts and in that book. So you can go get it now. All right, now enough of the jibber jabber. Let's get into this interview with Charles Johnson on the Champion Within and his full story on how he went out and made $17,000 in the last 30 days flipping houses using no cash and no credit. Let's get into it right now. All right, I am on the phone with a gentleman that I am excited to bring to you because he's went out and closed his first couple deals within 8 days of each other, and he has a compelling story that I think a lot of people can relate with. And actually, I was talking to him earlier today, and he was telling me a story of his, a situation, and it literally gave me goosebumps. So I'm excited to have him on the phone, and Mr. Charles Johnson. Charles, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Sean. How about you?
Good, man. Good. I am excited to talk to you because you've got quite the story. And so let's first off let's tell people what you've accomplished, right? And then we're going to take it back to where you were before you even found the Flip to Freedom and stuff like that. So let's talk about the two deals, and then the two checks you made real close to each other, and then we'll kind of go back to where you came from. Then we'll go bring into these deals and kind of get into specifics in it. So so you closed two deals back to back, and how much did you make on the first deal?
I actually made $13,450 on the first one.
Cool, $13,000. Now, what about your second one?
The second one was for $3,500.
So that's a total of, what are we saying here, about almost $17,000 roughly?
Correct.
So $17,000. Now, were you pretty excited when you got those checks?
Oh, man, yeah, excitement was an understatement. I was definitely very, very thrilled, excited, just pumped, the feeling of accomplishment. It was just an amazing feeling. Absolutely.
Yeah, I always tell people, man, when you get that check in your hands and it's real, you almost don't believe it's real. And it's funny because you get to a point where you're so expecting it, then when you get it, you're like, it was the next thing that could happen, the next progression. You know what I mean? So that's an incredible accomplishment. Now, and I know people are listening right now. Some people on the that are listening to this podcast, they have not got their first check. They may have listened to the podcast, or even maybe they're members of the Flip to Freedom Academy, and or they may just tripped across this their first time, and they're thinking, how is it possible? Now, how much did you have to close on these transactions? Did you actually have to fund them?
Not at all. Not $1 at all.
Not why. So you literally signed a contract with a seller, right?
Yes.
And then you lined up a buyer on both these deals.
Yes.
And you put them both together. You went through the attorney. They closed the transaction, and you got the check. So you didn't have to. Did you have your credit pulled?
No, not at all.
You didn't have your credit pulled. You didn't have to come to the table with X amount. What were the price of the houses?
One price of one house was $121,500.
Right.
And the other price of one house was actually I negotiated terms on a property for $15,000.
Okay, so it's not like you had to. No one pulled your credit. You didn't have to go through a process. You didn't have to line up transactional funding. You didn't have to line up, to go out and get a bank loan and find the money to close on the deals. You literally signed a contract with the seller. You signed a contract with the buyer. You put the two together and you made the difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, now some people listening are going, that is crazy. How can someone do that? But that is quick turn real estate. That's what this whole podcast is about, is be able to do that. So some people listening to this now are listening to it and they're thinking, okay, they're at the point where they, it hasn't clicked for them yet, or they haven't, got that one motivated seller yet, or they haven't got someone under contract, or they're in a situation, maybe even worse, they're in a, financial situation. They don't really, haven't found that niche yet that they can grow and prosper with. So, let's take you back to where you were before you even found, say, Flip to Freedom or me or the Flip to Freedom Academy. What was your life like in that time frame?
Well, kind of going backwards. I mean, I've always had an interest in real estate and really wanted to, learn how to kind of better my family, better my situation. So I, have heard, most millionaires are made, through real estate. So, you start, researching, reading books, things of that nature, and, you kind of get a little bit frustrated because, when you're out there looking and reading these books, there's really not a blueprint that kind of talks about, exactly what you need to do to kind of make the deal come to fruition and make the deal happen. So, I'd actually been downsized twice from, corporate America, and after the second time, I'm a former baseball player, so when you get 3 strikes, you're out.
Right.
So I got 2 on me, and I said, you know what, I'm not going to get 3 strikes, so you know what, I am going to just keep searching, and I just had faith that, something would be revealed to me that I was, supposed to do. And, I mean, once I found the Flip to Freedom, podcast, there was just something about the delivery and how you presented your information that just kind of clicked with me to where I felt like, wow, this is it. And, but was very, very frustrated, definitely, had some financial challenges, all the above, that, most people have. But again, I was at a point to, number one, extremely frustrated about not being able to kind of move forward and have the success like, all the gurus, teach, millionaire in, 2 or 3 days, which, that, doesn't really happen. It takes work. It takes, time. But once I found your podcast, definitely it all kind of made sense for me, for sure.
Right, kind of all clicked together. Now, you also told me a story where you were actually in a tragic situation, and it's funny. It's actually not funny. It's tragic, but some people, they look at their situation, and I think I read you that email from a gentleman earlier, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so depressed, and I lost my girlfriend, and I'm $20,000 in debt, and I'm this, and I'm that," and they look at their situation like it's doomsday. But when you start looking at other people in other situations, you're going, wow, you look for the things to be grateful in, and being in the Marine Corps for 4 years and spending, I went over to I was over in Iraq during the first Gulf War over there, and also went to Okinawa, Japan. I went to parts of Korea and Thailand and Philippines, and when you go to countries like that and you see what people are living in, and you see what people, what they're exposed to, and the kids are exposed to, and the lifestyle and the family that they have, and and stuff like that, you are so grateful about everything. I remember when I got off the ship from the Marine Corps, I literally got on the ground in San Diego and I kissed the ground because I was like, oh my gosh, I was just so grateful for being, back to the United States, being alive from war, of course, and then it kind of changed my perspective to thinking that, what, even if bad things happen in life, bad things are going to happen, but if you always look at the positive and you always look at the, be grateful for the things that you do have, even though some things might be bad at the time, if you're grateful for it, guess what? It will turn around quickly. And you had a dramatic situation in your life that can you kind of tell that story?
Sure, absolutely. About May of last year, I actually it started feeling really, really funny. Like when I mean funny, not funny for sure, but just started having some feelings in my arms that were kind of abnormal, meaning they were really, really cold. But if I would take your hand, you would say, well, Charles, your hands are warm. It doesn't feel cold to me. But long story short, I was actually diagnosed with a rare condition that 1 in 100,000 people get. Out of, the pot, my name was picked. So I actually was diagnosed with a rare condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS for short. Mm-hmm. And this rare condition actually attacks the nervous system of the body.
Wow. So
for about 6 months of last year, I actually, lost my ability to walk. And what I mean by my ability to walk, I was confined to wheelchair and a walker, and I was placed in intensive care for about a month and a half, and I went through about 3 months of rehabilitation to have to learn how to walk all over again. I had no ability to, utilize any of my lower body, so from waist down, nothing worked. But during that time frame, Sean, as you mentioned, you kind of look at life from a different lens.
Yeah.
You start to really think about, the things that you're grateful for. And I'll be just very, open with you. A couple of things that I really understood is, money is definitely, a very important factor in life. But at the end of the day, our relationships with our family and our, relationship with our Creator are the most important things that, we could have. And, even though I lost my ability to walk, I started, looking at the positives in my life, that, I wasn't able to walk, but guess what, man? I could see, I could speak. I still had a sound mind. I still had my beautiful baby boy who was healthy, and my wife, and my parents, and all those things. I started looking at all the things that were going well in my life and great in my life, even though I lost my ability to walk. And, I just started gaining a different perspective on life. I do know that, people out there that may be having some challenges with their current situation, what I would just say to them is, definitely take a step back and start looking at the things in your life that you can be grateful for, and really start being thankful for those things because, again, like you mentioned, Sean, once you see something from a different perspective, once you see a different country or you go through a different experience, it really changes who you are and changes your perspective on, really the gifts and the blessings that we do have.
Absolutely. And I mean, for myself, I can't even imagine, I'm 41 years old, and how old are you, Charles?
I'm actually 37.
37. So I'm 41, you're 37. I can't imagine where you go through life. You were baseball player, athlete, I was an athlete, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're in a situation where you can't walk, and that is taken away. It's it's kind of different if you were born in a situation where you can't walk. You've never experienced what it would like to be a walk. Not saying it's any different, but to be in that situation now, it's taken away, and then have to function around it is just amazing. And I know a lot of people that if that happened to them, would just go down the drain. They would just go down the drain. But you made a choice, and I think it's important, for people listening to this, is that he had a choice. He had a choice to feel bad and woe is me, and look at how his life is ruined, and how he's never going to be the same, and he's never going to do this, and he had a choice to choose what he focused on. And one of the greatest success principles that I was ever taught, that I apply in my life every single day, is if you want to change your situation, if you want to change where you are, you look for things that are working, and you look for things to be grateful all day long. That's what you do all day. Look for things to be grateful about, and that's what he's done. Now, tell us what happens. You searched for those things to become that you are grateful for, that were working, like your eyesight and your family and the things that you loved and stuff like that. And tell us your recovery story.
Well, the actual recovery. Well, there was a couple things that I definitely outlined first and foremost, and everyone that actually, from the nurses to the doctors, they knew it. No one was allowed in my room to discuss my condition as far as recovery time, and no one was actually was allowed to talk about anyone else's experience that had this condition to me in my room. Okay. The only thing that they could talk about in my room is what I needed to do to get better. That's the only thing. So if anyone came into the room and they said, hey, I know someone, that I would point to the door and they were to leave my room, because I had in my mind that I was going to make 100% recovery. That's all I used to say. I'm going to make 100% recovery. I'm going to make 100% recovery. I'm going to make 100% recovery, just over and over and over, until I would fall asleep. And I tell you, Sean, I actually made that recovery, and it was, now mind you, it was work.
Yeah.
It definitely was work. I mean, I was in physical therapy, learning how to, basically, utilize everything again. I mean, I was so weak, Sean, that I couldn't even clip my fingernails. Wow. That's how weak my body was. And I had, if I was to be lifted, they had to lift me with a lift. They would put this harness around my waist and actually hit a button, and it would lift me up, so I could stand up, and things of that nature. And I had to be turned in bed by family members because I really, nothing worked. But every day, I would go to therapy. I would work, and they would give me exercises to try. For example, they said, Charles, lift your leg off the bed, and I try and I try and I try, but it wouldn't move. But every day I would try. Every day I would try. Every day I would try. And lo and behold, one day, my leg flinched. It didn't come off the bed, but it flinched. And I said, "Did you see that?" And the doctor said I did. And I think that was after about 2.5 months of anything not being able to work and move. And I said, oh, my gosh, my leg just flinched. And from that point on, I just kept saying, I'm going to make 100% recovery. And I made a full recovery, Sean. I mean, and the doctors I actually went to see them, a while back. And, they looked at me, and it was almost as they looked like they saw a ghost. They were like, I cannot believe that he is standing here right now, in front of us, walking like nothing ever happened. And I said to them, well, what did you guys expect? Because this is exactly what I expected. I expected to make 100% recovery, and that's exactly what I did. And from my understanding, my recovery actually was one of the fastest in Charlotte, from, being able to have someone go from, being in intensive care for a month, basically, on machines, to, back to walking, within, 5-month period. So It was a very challenging time, but it was a life-changing time as well, because I really found out, what I was capable of. And I think, so many people out there that are going through, these challenges right now, they really don't know what they're capable of, and they're capable of doing so much and really achieving so much, but, they have to look within and say, you know what, I'm going to get that deal. I'm going to get this deal. I'm going to get that first deal. I'm going to make it happen. And you start working at it every day, just like I was working at, getting my health back and my strength back. And lo and behold, I'm in 100% recovery quicker than anyone that they've seen with this condition. So
Wow.
It's the same way with deals that I would say myself.
Wow. Now that is a unbelievable story, because, and you said some very, very important things for people listening, when, not only when it comes to health, but it comes to success and business and stuff. And, you said things like two things I thought were really compelling. Number one is that you would not let anybody around you that was negative, that would impact you in your thoughts, in your mind, to divert you from anything but from your mission, that was to get well and to have 100% recovery. So you literally controlled your environment, and you didn't let people come in. Now, if you want to relate that to business, now think about people, they go in, they go into a relative's house or friend's house, and what do they talk about? Oh my gosh, the economy's so bad, and this is terrible, and that's terrible, and my business is down, or this, I'm doing marketing, but it's not working. Those are just like those people in your room that are saying negative things about recovery. That is because that is a negative things that are going in people's minds. So you have to almost shield yourself. I don't watch the news. I read the news, portions of the newspaper just to kind of see what's going on in the world and stuff, but I don't sit there and watch the news, because all it is just negative stuff that comes in your head. So that's one thing that was very important. You controlled your environment, and you only let certain things, people that were only going to talk positive for your recovery, that would influence you, because you're either being influenced or you're influencing, and if you're being influenced, right, you got to be able to control who's influencing you, right? And number two, I think you said, is that you consistently over and over and over talk to yourself into the fact that you're having 100% recovery. So you gave yourself pep talks. You talked to yourself when you were asleep. I'm 100% recovery, 100% recovery. And that's what when in life. You got to constantly fill your head with, guess what? I'm going to get that first check. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to put out marketing. I'm going to get the calls. I'm going to get the deals. And it's a constant type of thing. Otherwise, what happens is our mind, is I picture our mind like this big ocean, and there's a sailboat, and if you don't blow the wind behind that sail and direct that boat where you want to go, then guess what? Someone else is going to do it, and you're going to wind up at a place you don't want to be. So those are two key important principles. So now you get to that point, and you're obviously 100% healthy today, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you're 100% healthy. You got how old's your son?
He'll be 2 in September.
You got a 2-year-old son, and that beautiful wife, and so now you've kind of progressed to that. You are now healthy. Now, when you start focusing on your business and you chose real estate, you found the Flip to Freedom Academy. Let's talk about the first deal that you did. The $13,000 deal.
Sure.
What type of marketing did you do? Well, first off, how were you feeling when because there's always a fear, to go out and actually start taking that action. So what got you over that fear to start put marketing out?
That's a great question, Sean. I think what it boiled down to is it gotten to a point in my life to where I had to make something happen, okay? Mm-hmm. And it was either make it happen or die trying. And I literally said, this is the bottom line. I am going to make it happen, or I am going to die trying. And, you know, it's one of those things to where it just kind of happens to where, you know, we have a choice, and I think, and it's something that I've kind of learned, you know, we have a choice to either do or not to do. And I think what happens in life is we sometimes coach ourselves or basically tell ourselves not to do things because of fear. Like, the fear paralyzes us so we don't go out and do it. But when you actually get to that point to where you have to make something happen, there's no other choice that can be made but make it happen. And, you know, when I found, you know, the Flip to Freedom Academy, and I started going through the podcast, and I signed up to the Academy and started going, you know, through the material. And I'll tell you, this is the first direct mail campaign that I did. I've never done a direct mail campaign before. And I'll go backwards just a little bit, Sean.
Sure.
I actually had 2 deals under contract before I actually got sick, okay, with GBS.
Uh-huh.
And I lost both of those deals while I was in the hospital because the contracts expired. I could do nothing with them.
Wow.
And one was under contract for $50,000. That house sold for $80,000. And I had another one under contract for $25,000, and that house sold for about $30,000. So that would have been my first 2 deals, but I lost them. Now I'm in the hospital, lost my health. But you know what? I just said, I will never quit. I will never quit. I will win. I don't know any other way, but you have to keep battling. You have to keep fighting. And, you know, again, I'm here now today, you know, just speaking about, you know, the success. But going back to your question, you know, I actually, you know, just got to a point to where I said, you know what? I feel great about what Sean's saying, and I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do what he says do. I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to see what happens. He said go out and put, you know, a direct mail campaign together with yellow letters. I'm going to do it. And he said go out there and you get, you know, a phone number or put your, you know, Google Voice number out there and set it up. Put some bandit signs out there. Guess what? I'm going to get up at 10 o'clock, you know, tonight, and this is typically what I would do. It's around 10 o'clock my time, 10:30. I'd go out and I'd write up, you know, my signs, my bandit signs, and I go and I put 25 out, you know, in a certain area. You know, I get home at about, you know, 1 o'clock on Friday, and I did that for, you know, about a month, you know, just doing the same thing over and over. And, you know, after I did that direct mail campaign, I think I sent out maybe 400 letters. The phone started ringing. It was really weird. It's like, man, this stuff really works. And that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, wow, like, this stuff really works. People are calling me saying, hey, I see your sign out that you buy houses. And I'm like, yeah, I do.
I do, yeah.
And, you know, you start to kind of say, okay, this stuff really does work. And then, you know, I actually set up an e-voice number with my direct mail campaign, and, you know, I'm getting text messages after text messages of people calling me, you know, leaving messages about the letter for me wanting to buy the house. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, this stuff is working, you know. And it was an amazing feeling, you know, even just that, getting the feeling that, you know, the work that you're putting out there is paying off.
Right.
You know, and, you know, not every call was a deal, but you know what? You get that practice. You get that practice to talk to that seller and find out, you know, if it is a deal. And, you know, it's a practice thing, because once you actually talk to one seller and, you know, you get confidence when you talk to the second one, and you get more confidence when you talk to the third one, and it just kind of continues to progress after that.
Yeah, and that's part of the education, you know. You know, the education, yeah, that you can listen to the podcast and you can read my, you know, book at flip2freedom.com, and you can go in and even sign up for the academy, and you can watch the videos, and you can put all the stuff together. But until you actually send out those letters or you put out those signs and calls start coming in, that is the real education. That is the real education because, when you start talking to sellers, now there will be a fear, and education helps, to get to know what to say and what to look for when talking to sellers and stuff. But you will get an education, and by the 10th caller, the 50th caller, the 100th caller, you'll be a lot more confident than you will on the first caller. So the action is basically the antidote for fear. Just get out and do it. Okay, so with this particular deal, you put out some bandit signs. You also put out some direct mail. And where did this particular lead come from?
It actually came from the direct mail campaign.
Okay, and did you target absentee investors?
I did. It was an absentee owner deal. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how did you know they called in? How did you know the person was motivated?
Well, I was getting so many calls, just from, the letters that I put out. I was kind of, losing track, of all the calls that were coming in.
Right.
Just very open with you. And this one gentleman called me, and about 4 days later, okay, he called me again. He left a message the first time and said, "Hey, I got your letter. I want to talk to you about the house I'm looking to sell. Please call me back." And I got the message, wrote it down, and I was working on a couple other deals that I was trying to put those together that I didn't have a chance to give him a call back.
Right.
But I noticed the motivation when he called me back a second time. He said, "Hey, Charles, my name's on the letter." He said, "Hey, Charles, I got your letter. I left you a message a few days ago about my house. I'm interested in speaking with you more about it, but, I definitely want to talk to you about it. But what I want to make sure is," he said, "before I actually list the property with a realtor, I want to talk to you first and see, if it's something that you're interested in." And when I got that second message, I said, "Okay, I need to call this guy. I need to call this guy right now." And I did.
That's a clue. That is a clue. Actually, I got a deal I'm working on right now. Same thing. The guy called 3 times before we got back to, all in the same day. Called 3 times, and hey, I was like, he really, really wanted to sell the house really bad.
Right.
So yeah. So if that is a sign of motivation. If they call back multiple times, then that's a good one. So tell me, you wrote down the information. You talked to them. He was out of state, or was he was an in-state owner or out-of-state owner?
He was an in-state owner. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And did you set an appointment after you talked to him? How'd that conversation go with him?
So basically what I did, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was on the phone with him on Saturday. It was about, I would say, 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And I called him back, and, we were talking, and we started talking about the property. We started talking about the address and all that, where the house was located. And, while I'm talking to him, I'm kind of just piddling around on the computer. And, we asked the question, got the address, and, I said, what repairs are needed on the house? And he started going through and just kind of, laundry list of repairs that he was saying, and he understood that the house needed some work, and, he definitely knew that, in order for him to kind of move it, he was going to have to be flexible and, to get the numbers that he wanted out of the house to be able to move it. So when we got on the phone, he was more so talking about, the area, the location, and all of that. And once I got the address, I asked him, I said, what are you looking to get out of the house? And he said, well, what I'm looking to get out of the house and what I'll probably actually get, I don't know. He said, but, I'm looking to get about $145,000 out of the house.
Okay.
And now, I know this is not the typical way you actually run comps, but for this particular deal, it actually helped out, very well. But I'm actually on Zillow while he's giving me the address. Okay.
Right.
And I look on Zillow, and I put in the property address, and it gives me, kind of the value that they say. And then it also gave me property listings, the properties that are listed in that area too. And I noticed that there were properties on the market in that area for like $250,000, $260,000,
wow.
$245,000.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, so not to get too excited, over the phone, because he just said I want 140, and on top of that, I identified and really picked up on the fact that he said, this is what I'm asking for, but I don't know what I'll wind up getting. So I knew that there was some flexibility in the pricing there too as well by just listening to, him saying that he knows that what he's asking for he may not be able to get.
Right.
And, I actually asked him right then and there, I said, how soon can you be at the house? And he said, well, I don't live too far from it. I can be there in about an hour and a half. And I said, done deal, I'll meet you there. Because even though I didn't know, I was going to be able to really get down to the numbers of where we needed to be based on rehab and all of that, but I did know that it was definitely a deal that I needed to look at and look at it immediately. So I, threw on some jeans and a, shirt and some shoes, and I headed out the door.
Yes, said, honey, I'm out of here. I'm going to get a contract.
That's it.
You know, it's funny. I do the exact same thing. When you have someone you will know, and that person pretty much gave you all the signs between what they were looking for, and it was the story that they kind of told. It wasn't really one specific thing. It was just the kind of the story that they told of what they're looking for and stuff like that. But you immediately said, okay, I want to go see the house. That is the absolute right thing to do. So you're getting your stuff together. You pulled your comps. You had your contract with you, right? And you got in the car and you bolted down there. How did the appointment go?
The appointment went really well. We walked through the house. Showed me everything that needed to be repaired on the property, and I had my list, and I'm going through my list and jotting down some things of what I feel the house really needs. And I basically we left the home. I was there probably for about 45 minutes to an hour, just doing a very thorough walkthrough. But we left, that meeting, basically, I let him know that I wouldn't bother him on Sunday. I'd, give him Sunday off. But Monday, I would definitely give him a call first thing in the morning, with, the offer that, I felt that I could actually pay for the property. But I need to run my numbers as far as what I need, the rehab cost on the property was concerned. And I knew he was asking for $140. So, I wanted to obviously just run the numbers and make sure the numbers work. But the meeting went really well. It went really, really well.
That's awesome. So yeah, and I've done that as well, because sometimes there's two different approaches. If I know someone's highly motivated and they're like drooling, to get rid of the house, then I'll do a contract right on site. If I know that there's motivation there, but maybe not to the point where I need him to be, then I'll let him wait for 24 to 48 hours like you did, and then I will send over an offer via fax or email. And then be able to justify my number, that way, because that lets them know that you really did think about it, you really did, understand it, and sent them over the offer. So did you fax it over to him? Did you email it? What'd you do?
Actually, on Monday, I actually gave him a call. And, I just informed him, that there was actually another property that I was looking at in the area that I was actually wanting to buy, but it was between this property and this other property. So, I just mentioned that, I was looking for the best pricing on whichever one, and whichever one I, got the best pricing on was the one that I was going to, put under contract. So, I actually kind of didn't feel comfortable offering this number, but I was like, man, this house needs some repairs, and I kind of had in mind, the profit that I wanted to make off the deal, and I just it kind of felt weird, but I said, Mr. Seller, all I can actually offer you on this property, I know you're looking for $140, but I can only offer $114.5 on this house.
Wow.
And
now, did you have to swallow? Did you have a big knot in your throat? You're going,
oh my God. That was probably one of the toughest things, is to get the courage to say, man, I know this is low from what you're asking for, and you don't want to insult anybody, but it's like, man, this is really all I can do. And I told him, $114.5, and then once I said that, I didn't say another word.
You shut up. You didn't say a word.
I didn't say another word, and he said, okay. He said $114.5, and he said, is that the best? Is that the best you can do? And I said, yes, that's the best that I can do. And he said, well, I've got two other partners that I need to run this by. and then, you know, I'll get back with you probably tomorrow. And at that point in time, now I'm getting nervous because I'm like, okay, he's getting ready to go see or talk to someone else. And, you know, maybe, you know, I'm going to be out of the deal. So, you know, I said, hey, real quick, you know, I'm trying to get feedback as quickly as possible so I know which one of these deals I'm going to actually, you know, get under contract because, you know, I do have, you know, some funding that I want to, you know, put towards, you know, either this property or another property. But, you know, I do like this one. So if you could, you know, get in contact with your contacts and let me know within the hour because I am expected to, you know, just have a final decision by the end of the day. And he said, okay, I'll do my best. And within 30 minutes, he called me back and he said, you know, my partners agreed, and we'll seal the deal for $114.5. And I was like, great. I was like, I'll have all the agreements lined up, and we'll have all the paperwork, you know, signed, you know, first thing tomorrow morning. And
now, were you jumping?
Oh my gosh!
Were you jumping? I'm jumping right now inside, going, "Boom, baby!" That was.
I'm like, yeah. So I was very, 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 very pumped. And you know, it's what's funny about that story, Sean, is that I'll tell you, and this is kind of a sidebar for, you know, anyone new out there, you know, that may not know where to get started. You know, I would say the first thing that you can do is start meeting people in your area that you know that are investors or that they have the signs out, and, you know, meet them at the local RIA. You know, start calling and introducing yourself and start talking to people.
Yep.
And I share that story because, you know, after I put that house under contract, I got a phone call from, you know, an investor that I met him 3 years ago, okay? They're one of the largest rehabbers here in the city, okay? I met them 3 years ago now, and I never have done a deal with them, you know, but I stayed in contact with them, and, you know, it's more so just casual contact, how things going, and they're like, things are going great, and, you know, just talking, you know, just, all right, well, let's do lunch one day, and, you know, those types of things, just kind of building that relationship. So, ironically, the seller's realtor, okay, had actually told him, you know, you guys, if you want to do a quick sale on this house, you may actually want to reach out to one of the guys that, you know, buy houses, one of the companies that buy houses. I know one in the city of Charlotte that's really reputable. I'll give them your number, have them call you. Okay? This is very, very, it's just, man, it's awesome how this thing just came together. So less than 30 minutes of me getting off the phone with the seller, I get a phone call from those investors. They're like, hey, Charles, you know, heard you actually just put a great deal together over, you know, on, you know, Tamworth. And I'm like, how did they know this? Like, I just put this house under contract. I'm like, these guys are everywhere. Like, how did they know that? And and he left me a message. He said, you know, give me a call back. You know, would love to just catch up and see how things are going. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So I called him back. You know, and I said, you know, hey man, how's it going? He said, everything's going well. And he said, yeah, man, I just got off the phone with the seller. And he said, you know, I let them know once he told me that he had the house under contract. Now, mind you, Sean, I didn't actually have the written contract.
Yeah, okay? You just have a verbal.
I had a verbal, exactly. And the seller actually said, you know, hey, you know, you guys just missed it. I just, you know, put the house, you know, under contract 30 minutes ago with another investor here in Charlotte. And they asked, and they were like, you know, well, we know the guy that you're working with. He's a great guy. You know, he'll definitely take care of you because, again, you know, I developed that relationship. They knew me more so as a person, you know, than anything.
Right.
Because, again, I hadn't done any business with him, but, you know, I, you know, called him over the phone and asked him if there was anything I could do to help him out. You know, just let me know whether it's, you know, maybe putting out a lockbox or, you know, going and, you know, checking on a delivery at one of their projects. And I really asked them if I could do anything to help them out, you know, to basically show them that, you know, anything that I could do to help them grow their business, I was willing to be there for them because I could learn from them because they were experienced investors.
Right.
And just got them on the phone, and he said, so what are you going to do with this deal? And I said, well, I'm not sure yet. He said, well, if you're looking to wholesale it, let's talk about it. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? That's what I'm thinking in the back of my mind. And I'm like,
so this all happened on. This all happened. Was it on this? Was it this Monday afternoon?
The Monday afternoon, absolutely. It all happened on the same day. And another thing that I would just kind of a sidebar, Sean, you speak about the action, okay? You have to take action. That's one of the things I learned, and you can't wait, because if I hadn't called that seller back on Saturday and said I'm going to wait to call him back on Monday, I would have probably lost out on that deal, because I wouldn't have had it under contract. I wouldn't have had time to go review the property, because literally they called him 30 minutes after I said, hey, this is what I'm going to offer on the house.
Right.
And they accepted the agreement. So action, do it now, and that's kind of my motto. It's like, get it done now, or it doesn't get done. Let's do it now. But yeah, it all happened on that Monday for sure.
Wow. So that was a pretty roller coaster escalating Monday for you. I mean, literally you had to, you had to make the phone call to the guy and let him know that you were going to offer $114,500 for him, which I know, and I've done tons of those phone calls. That is not an easy phone call to make, especially you see other comps out there for $250,000. You're thinking, holy cow, this guy is he's going to blow me off the phone and think I'm crazy. But you had the guts to be able to do it. And it's funny because, one of the things that I do every time if I make a very difficult call to a seller or something like that, before I do it, I always, right before I get on the phone, I ask God, and I say, God, give me the strength to help me get through this call and convey to the seller that this is the right price. And it's funny, it's amazing that for some reason it always goes smooth. I'm not saying the seller always accepts every deal that I say, but it's amazing how it's more than not, So anyways, so then he hung up, called back 30 minutes later, and then so you were freaking out for 30 minutes, thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I did it too much, maybe I offered too little, I'm going to lose the deal. The guy calls back, and when you get off the phone after the seller says, okay, let's do it, aren't you jumping for joy? That is just, you're just like, woo, it's just awesome. And then to have within another 30 minutes, you have the thing sold for a high. How'd you negotiate with this guy on price?
Well, that was the interesting thing. He said, well, how much are you looking to sell it for? And I said, well, I actually don't know yet, because I need to just kind of come up with my repair cost. And once I do that, then I can kind of let you guys know what I'd be looking to sell it for. So what was interesting, and there's a part 2 to this story. So I actually called him back and I said, you know what, I think I got my repair cost, somewhere around $35,000 is what it's going to take to get this property, looking really nice. And
now, let me back up. How'd you come up with that number? Did you just pull it out of the air, or did you do like the multiplier we talk about? How'd you come up with that?
Yeah, I kind of did. I did the multiplier. I also kind of went through, and I actually have a sheet that I kind of worked through as well, just as far as I definitely did the multiplier with the 70% minus repair cost, and minus my fee that I'm looking to get out of the deal.
Well, I'm talking about the repair multiplier, where you take the square footage multiplied between $8 and $12 a foot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I did that too as well.
Okay.
And then I had another little sheet that I have a little cheat sheet that I use that I've been talking with some of the contractors that I know what it kind of costs to get certain things done. As far as repairs, maybe resanding hardwood floors and replacing an AC unit and painting, and all those types of things. And I came up with, $35,000. And, that was the actual, repair cost. And what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to, my goal was to make $20,000 out of this deal. That was my goal. I wanted to make a $20,000 profit.
Mm-hmm.
So I called, the buyers back on the phone, and I said, hey, I got the price, and, you guys can come take a look at it, on tomorrow if you want, or you can meet me out there today, and we can do a walkthrough, and you guys can see it. But, I want to, basically, get $135,000 for the property. Okay?
Which is still a smoking deal.
Right. Absolutely. And so they're like, okay, well, we want to come take a look at it. I'm like, great. And I said, well, I'll meet you out there today. So we did a full walkthrough, and we were talking about the deal. And their experience. When I say their experience, rehabbers, I mean they do anywhere from 4 to 7 houses a month. Okay, so they know what they're doing, and they're doing really well. So at the end of that conversation, at the walkthrough, they said, Charles, they said, man, I had to tell you, your numbers on this rehab budget is off. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I was like, okay, what are you guys thinking rehab is going to be? They said, well, just running my numbers right now, we're looking at $50,000 just right now as far as rehab, and it's probably going to run more into the $60,000 range. And I'm like, okay. And he said, so the price that you're asking for, we won't be able to do that. And then I said, well, what are you thinking, from a numbers perspective? And he said, probably the top end that we'll be able to do on this is maybe 125. And I'm like, wow. So now I'm kind of backtracking now. I'm like, oh man. I mean, I know.
This is the thing. From a buyer's perspective, right? The only thing they can negotiate is repair cost and comparable value. That's it.
Right.
That's the only thing they can negotiate. So they'll push hard on your repair cost. That's why I rarely give them a number. I usually give them a ballpark, some sort of like a ballpark number of where it needs to be. And then, but that's the only things they can negotiate. And it's difficult because on the repair value, unless you have an actual contractor's bid, it's very difficult, to be able to do that. The only way to counteract the repair cost is say, okay, I can appreciate that. I'll just, I got 4 or 5 other guys I need to show it to, and, we'll see what their repair cost is. And if it's still around, in the next couple of days, then I might be able to do that price. And as soon as you take the property away and let them know that you're going to be talking to other people, they change their tune real quick. So, anyway, so back to your story. So he said 125. So that brought you're in it for 114.5. So what did you do next?
So I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, and the funny thing about it, Sean, is I knew this was a deal. Like I knew I had.
Well, you already had $10,000. You had roughly $10,000 profit. Even at 125, you're in the green. You know what I mean? Right,
exactly. But I was shooting for that $20,000. I was like, I just have to make $20,000, And it's interesting because I wanted to make the $20,000, but again, if I had to take the $10,000, I was going to take the $10,000. I wasn't going to blow the deal for that amount of money. I was going to basically take the money that was there. But you know what, man? I said, you know what? I actually going to do something that I even got more nervous about, but I did it anyway. I actually called the seller back.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Mr. Seller, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. And I said, the good news is that, I still definitely am highly, highly interested in the property. I said, but the bad news is I have actually under budgeted my rehab cost. And I said, I hate to actually have this conversation, but, I wanted to just see, if there's anything else that we could do. And he asked, he said, so, what are you talking about? Like, how much are you, over, under budget? And I said, well, I'm off about $15,000. And he said, $15,000? He said, well, there's no way we're taking $15,000 off the purchase price. Like, what are you asking us to do? And at that point, I'm like, oh my goodness, uh-oh, maybe I shouldn't have made this phone call. Maybe I should have took the $10,000 and just kind of moved on. But at that point, what I wound up doing is I said, I understand that there's nothing that we can do, but again, I definitely am interested in the property. But how I actually spun it to them was that, I don't want to get into an actual project or to where we run out of funding to where we can't complete the deal, or someone else runs out of funding to be able to complete the deal, and we've got a property that's out there. So, long story short, he said, well, Charles, if we meet in the middle, will that help you out? And at that point in time, the first time when I put it on the contract, I was jumping up and down.
Yeah.
I was jumping up and down the second time because I was like, absolutely, I would just $7,500 more off. You know what? Yes, we can do that. If that's the best you can do, yeah, I'll take it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just negotiated this down another $7,500. And I'm thinking in my mind, I am very close to getting, my 125. I'm sorry, my $20,000 profit and 125 sales price. So I was going to be really close to the actual $20,000 that I was looking to make. So I was like, I'll take 18.
Right.
And I went back to the actual buyers, and I said, you know what, I'll sell it to you guys for 125. And they said, well, we ran some more numbers. I'm like, oh gosh,
here we go.
And they said, about the top we're going to be able to pay on this property is 120. And I said, well,
so he's trying to talk you down another. Oh my gosh.
And I shut it down, Sean, right then and there. I said, you know what? I kind of did the takeaway. I said, you know what? Completely understand. I know you guys have to make it work with your numbers. But I know this is a great deal. I'm looking at comps of properties that are selling in this neighborhood for, $240, $250. I mean, to get this property at 125, it would be a great deal for you guys. And I said, I want to work with you guys and basically earn your business as far as, being a wholesaler and wholesaling you guys a deal. I said, but, if this won't work, I completely understand. And then I kind of pulled it away, and before I got off the phone, I said, you know what, let's just do this. I said, I know this is our first time working together. I said, if you give me 121.5, it's your deal. I won't market it to anyone. You send me the contracts today. I know you guys want to be at 120. I want to be at 125. I'll be flexible with you guys. We do, 121.5. We'll close the deal. And he said, okay, let me talk to my partner, and I'll give you a call back. And they called me back within 10 minutes and said it's a done deal. We're sending over the contracts in 15 minutes.
Boom.
Done.
Done. So you got the seller and where you wanted to be. You got the buyer where you wanted to be. And you walked out of the closing table after closing costs and everything with $13,000. How much?
$13,450.
Talk about an awesome. Now, I mean that's the whole roller coaster, and it's amazing once you start building momentum in this business that you'll have 5 and 6 deals all going at the same time with these same type of negotiations going on. It's so much fun. It's a blast. To be able to do it. Well, all I can say, man, is absolutely congratulations. That was a stellar performance. Negotiating with the buyer and the seller and getting that whole thing wrapped down. So I'm excited for you.
Well, definitely, and I would just like to add, for someone out there that maybe kind of on the fence or struggling with confidence and just not really knowing if this works. I've been in that seat. You know, I've been on the other line listening to these, success stories from other students and saying, you know what, I mean, did this really happen? Or, did they, pay someone to talk about this? But, I'm serious, Sean. I mean, I've been there, and I'm like, can this really happen for me? And, what the interesting thing is about it is, you give the blueprint. You give the blueprint of how to make a deal come to fruition and get money in the bank, okay? Now, you know it works because you implemented it and you've utilized it and you've put it into action and you've closed and made money off of it. So, someone who hasn't implemented the plan and put it to action, they don't really know if it works. I'm here to say that I know that it works because I only put a portion of the blueprint together and got 2 deals from it. So anyone out there, that may be on the fence, that may be going through some challenges, you made it, a statement early on, Sean. You just talked about action. We will never be able to achieve our goals without, putting action, into them to make them come to pass. So, definitely anyone out there, again, I definitely want to push you to just take action. Even if it's small action, you can listen to the podcast, you can read the ebook, but yes, you can read a book on learning how to shoot a free throw, but until you get into the game or get on that basketball court and actually pick that ball up and shoot it to the hoop, you will never learn how to shoot a free throw. And, if you shoot 10 times after you're first learning how to shoot free throws, you may miss, 8 out of them and hit 2. But the more you shoot and the more you take action and the more you actually get out there and do the things that the Flip to Freedom Academy really implements and puts those strategies together, that the better you'll get. The better you'll get, the more confidence you'll get, the more momentum you'll get, and before you know it, you'll be closing that deal, and it'll just be a great success story. So, Sean, I just want to say thank you, man. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate it. And I put the podcast out there so people really can understand that this can happen, and they can hear stories from you and other people that have been part of the Flip to Freedom Academy or even listen to the podcast. And so I wrote the book to kind of lay out the whole plan, the 19-week plan. And then I put the podcast together to kind of talk about specific, whether it be negotiating or getting properties under contract or marketing or finding buyers or whatever, so people understand. But the Flip to Freedom Academy was pretty much born out of people asking for more, of saying, hey, how do I specifically search for absentee owners, and what search criteria do I do, and what letter do I do, what marketing do I do? Well, what specifically, how do I do Google AdWords, and what keywords do I use, and how do I get the website templates and get this? So when you dive into the Flip to Freedom Academy, and people sign up there, not only do we have, each module is 19 weeks broken down, there's 4 or 5 videos in each module, but it takes you from not only getting your first step, which is getting your first check, but then goes through on exactly how to build a lasting business, then eventually build cash flow, to where then you can get your cash flow where it's coming in irregardless of if you do any deals or not, which is the amazing thing. Or imagine if your monthly bills were $10,000 a month and your cash flow is $20,000 a month, whether you woke up or not, just coming in from investment properties. That is true freedom, where you have you can pretty much go out and do whatever you want. So, and not only is there just having a community where we can go in there and can ask questions and talk to people all over the entire country and share success stories and things that's happening, and kind of gives you some sort of accountability to what you're doing, and also share what you've been doing and your success with other people. So that's kind of how the whole thing came together, and I'm glad you were able to take advantage of it and become a member, and now go out and get this get this success.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much, Sean. Appreciate it.
appreciate it. All right. Well, we will end this call, and I know, Charles, you're talking about writing a book about your success story there, and of what your recovery story there. And what were you going to call that again?
It's called the Champion in You.
The Champion in You. I think that's that is a great ending to this, because you know what? Everybody has it in them. All you got to do is you just got to have a little bit of belief, and a little bit, just a little bit. And in the Bible it says if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, then you can move mountains. Well, what's the mountains? Well, the mountains are these obstacles. Might be your friends and your family and your relatives saying it's not going to work, or the obstacles of you being afraid to to talk to sellers or take that action or do whatever it might be. But all you need is just a little bit of faith that it's going to work, and Charles had that faith that it was going to be able to work, and it doesn't have to be a lot of faith. It's just a little. And if you can have that faith and the belief that it will work for you, and Charles isn't different, I'm not different, all the other people you hear, they're not different. It's just they went out and they did something. They took that action. He went out and he put letters out. He put signs out. Calls started coming in, and what happens is it just takes you into a progression of where now you're talking to people. And next thing you know, you're going to find one that's going to come along that's going to be a motivated seller, and they're going to want to sell their house, And all it is just the faith the size of a mustard seed, and you can go out and move mountains. And that's what he has done, not only in his life to go out and get to a level of health and conquering something that was just unbelievably rare, but also now conquered that first step, which is go out and get your first check and second check in this business. And I commend you, Charles. You did a phenomenal job. Thank you so much for your time spending us on this interview. I hope this interview has inspired these people listening to this, that they will get off of their butts and get working and start cranking it out, for not only for them, but also for their family, and to prove it that they can go out and accomplish something. Because you know what? Eventually, we're all going to be in a place when we're 80 or 90 years old, and we're going to be all shriveled up, and we're going to be in a situation where we're not going to be able to take action. And we're going to have regret saying, I shoulda, woulda, coulda. And guess what? I know you and I aren't going to be there going, we shoulda, woulda, coulda. We're going to be there going, we're just going to be there laying there going, we did it. We had a phenomenal life.
Absolutely.
So that's awesome. All right, well, sounds good. We'll sign off. For everybody, we wish you ultimate success in your real estate investing career. Take care and God bless, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right.